Exorcism. The expulsion or attempted expulsion of a supposed evil spirit from a person or place. Today, we're looking at one of the most known practices of exorcism recorded. The Exorcism of Anneliese Michel. Anna Elizabeth Anneliese Michel, born September 21st, 1952, and died July 1st, 1976, was a German woman who underwent 67 Catholic exorcism rites during the year before her death. She died of malnutrition, for which her parents and priest were convicted of negligent homicide. She was diagnosed with epileptic psychosis, which is also known as temporal lobe epilepsy, and had a history of ineffective psychiatric treatment. When Michel was 16, she experienced a seizure and was diagnosed with psychosis caused by temporal lobe epilepsy. Shortly thereafter, she was diagnosed with depression and was treated by a psychiatric hospital by the time she was 20. She had become intolerant of various religious objects and began to hear voices. Her condition worsened despite medication, and she became suicidal, also displaying other symptoms for which she took medication for as well. After the taking of psychiatric medications for 5 years failed to improve her symptoms, Michel and her family became convinced she was possessed by a demon. As a result, her family appealed to the Catholic Church for an exorcism. While rejected at first, 2 priests got permission from the local bishop in 1975. The priests began conducting exorcism sessions, and the parents stopped consulting doctors. Anneliese Michel stopped eating food and died of malnourishment and dehydration after 67 exorcism sessions. Michel's parents and the 2 Roman Catholic priests were found guilty of negligent homicide and were sentenced to 6 months in jail, reduced to 3 years of probation, and a fine. In a conference several years later, German bishops retracted to claim that she was possessed. Several films are based on her story, including the 2005 film The Exorcism of Emily Rose, and the award-winning 2006 film Requiem, and the 2011 film Anneliese, The Exorcist Tapes. Born as Anna Elizabeth Michel on September 21st, 1952, in Leipzig, Bavaria, West Germany, to a Roman Catholic family, Michel was raised along with 3 sisters by her parents Joseph and Anna. She was religious and attended Mass twice a week. When she was 16, she experienced a severe convulsion and was diagnosed with temporal lobe epilepsy in 1973. Michel attended the University of Würzburg. Her classmates later described her as withdrawn and very religious. In June 1970, Michel had a 3rd seizure at the psychiatric hospital where she had been staying. She was prescribed anticonvulsion drugs for the first time, including Dilantin, which did not alleviate the problem. She described seeing devil faces at various times of the day. That same month, she was prescribed Olept, which is similar to chlorpromazine and is used in the treatment of various psychoses, including schizophrenia, disturbed behavior, and delusions. By 1973, she began experiencing depression, hallucinating while praying, and complaining about hearing voices telling her that she was damned and would rot in hell. Michel's treatment in a psychiatric hospital did not improve her health, and her depression worsened. Long-term treatment did also not help, as she grew increasingly frustrated with her medical care after taking pharmacological drugs for 5 years. Michel became very intolerant of Christian sacred places and objects, such as the crucifix. Michel visited San Damiano with a family friend who regularly organized Christian pilgrimages. Her escort concluded that she was suffering from demonic possession because she was unable to walk past a crucifix and refused to drink the water of a Christian holy spring. Anneliese told me, and Fraulein confirmed this, that she was unable to enter the shrine. She approached it with the greatest hesitation, then said that the soil burned like fire, and she could simply not stand it. She then walked around the shrine in a wide arc and tried to approach it from the back. She looked at the people there, who were kneeling in the area surrounding the little garden, and it seemed to her that while praying they were gnashing their teeth. She got as far as the edge of the little garden, Then she had to turn back. Coming from the front again, she had to avert her glance from the picture of Christ in the chapel of the house. She made it several times to the garden, but could not get past it. She also knew that she could no longer look at medals or pictures of saints. They sparkled so immensely that she could not stand them. Michel's family and community became convinced that she was possessed and consulted several priests to request an exorcism. The priests declined and recommended the continuation of medical treatment and informed the family that exorcism required the bishop's permission. In the Catholic Church, official approval for an exorcism is granted when the subject strictly meets a set criteria and is considered to be suffering from possession, or, as they call it, infestation, and under demonic control. Intense dislike for religious objects and supernatural powers are some first indications. Michel worsened physically and displayed aggression, injured herself, drank her urine, and ate insects. In November 1973, Michel began treatment with Tegretol, an anti-seizure drug and mood stabilizer. She was prescribed antipsychotic drugs during the religious rites and consumed them frequently until sometime before her death. Despite taking these neuroleptic medications, Michel's symptoms worsened and she began growling, seeing demons, and throwing things. The priest, Father Ernst Alt, declared that Michel didn't look like an epileptic, and that he did not observe her experiencing seizures. Alt believed that she was suffering from demonic possession and urged the local bishop to allow an exorcism. In a letter to Alt in 1975, Michel wrote, "I am nothing. Everything about me is vanity. What should I do? I have to improve. You pray for me." And also once told him, "I want to suffer for other people, but this is so cruel." In September 1975, Bishop Joseph Stengel permitted Father Arnold Renz to perform an exorcism according to this ritual Romanum, but ordered total secrecy. Renz performed the first session on the 24th of September. Michel began increasingly speaking about dying to atone for the wayward youth of the day and the apostate priests of the modern church. Her parents stopped consulting doctors at her request and relied solely on the exorcism rites. A total of 67 exorcism sessions, 1 or 2 each week, lasting up to 4 hours each, were performed over approximately 10 months in 1975 and 1976. Toward the end of her life, Michel began to refuse food. On July 1st, 1976, Michel died in her home. The autopsy report stated that the cause of death was malnutrition and dehydration, resulting for almost a year in a state of near starvation while the rites of exorcism was performed. She weighed 30 kilograms, suffered broken knees from continuous genuflections, was unable to move without assistance, and was reported to have contracted pneumonia. After an investigation, the state prosecutor maintained that Michel's death could have been prevented as late as 1 week before she died. In 1976, the state charged Michel's parents and priest Ernst Alt and Arnold Renz with negligent homicide. Parents were defended by famed Nuremberg trials of defense attorney Erich Schmidt Lechner, and the priest defense counsel were paid by the church. The state recommended that none of the involved parties be jailed. Instead, the recommended sentence for the priest was a fine, while the prosecution concluded that the parents should be exempt from punishment as they had suffered enough, a mitigating legal factor in German penal law. The trial began on March 30th, 1978, in the district court and drew intense interest. Doctors testified that Michel was not possessed, stating that the manifestations of demonic possession were a psychological effect of her strict religious upbringing as well as her epilepsy. Dr. Richard Roth, whom Alt had consulted for medical help, allegedly told Michel during the exorcism that there is no injection against the devil, Anneliese. Schmidt-Lechner argued that the exorcism was legal, and the German Constitution protected citizens and the unrestricted exercise of their religious beliefs. The defense played tapes recorded at the exorcism sessions, sometimes featuring what was claimed to be demons arguing to assert their claim that Michel was possessed. Both priests claimed that the demons identified themselves as Lucifer, Cain, Judas Iscariot, Belial, Legion, Hitler, and Nero, among others. They also stated that Michel was finally freed of demonic possession resulting from the exorcism just before her death. Bishop Stengel said that he was not aware of Michel's alarming health condition when he approved of the exorcism and did not testify in court. April 1978, the Michels and the two priests were convicted of negligent homicide, but were given suspended prison sentences, and they were ordered to share the cost of the legal proceedings. The sentences has not been described as stiffer than those requested by the prosecutor, who had asked the priest only be fined and the parents be found guilty but not punished. By approving the ancient exorcism rite, the church drew public and media attention. According to author John M. Duffy, the case was a misidentification of mental illness. In a conference several years later, German bishops retracted the claim that she was possessed. The Michels asked the authorities for permission to exhume the remains of their daughter because she'd been buried in an undue hurry in a cheap coffin. Almost 2 years after the burial, on February 25, 1978, her remains were replaced in a new oak coffin lined with tin. The official reports state that the body bore signs of consistent with deterioration of a corpse that age. The family and the priest were discouraged from viewing Michel's remains. Father Renslater stated that he had been prevented from entering the mortuary. Michel's gravesite remains a pilgrimage site. The number of officially sanctioned exorcisms decreased in Germany following the ordeal, despite Pope Benedict XVI's support for wider use of the practice compared to that of his predecessor, Pope John Paul II, who in 1999 tightened the rules to permit only rare cases for exorcisms. On June 6, 2013, a fire engulfed the house where Michel had lived, although the local police determined that it was a case of arson. Some locals attributed the fire to the exorcism case. I will now end the video off with approximately 10 minutes of the real tapes that were recorded during her exorcisms. Viewer discretion is advised.
Neid über die andere Engel.
Was gibt's nicht, Ruhe gibt's nur da oben.
Ruhe gibt's nur dort, wo die Liebe ist.
Ja, bei uns gibt's nur ja nun.
Nur Hass.
Ja.
Und wo nur Hass ist, da gibt's keine Ruhe.
Nein. Und für uns gibt's nie Ruhe. Nie.
Weil,
Ewigkeit.
weil er nicht dorthin kommt, wo der Schöpfer ist.
Aber für uns gibt's kein Zurück.
Im Namen des Vaters.
Und jetzt bin ich verdammt.
Nach Liebe Kraft an
Anima mea Domino, et exultavit Spiritus meus, in Deus salutari meo, via respexit humilitatem anciles sue, ex elim ex hoc beata medicent omnes generationes, via fecit mihi magna mihodem misericordia Deus,
Ich bin verdammt, weil ich so schlecht mein Amt verwaltet habe.
Wer bist du? Judas.
Nein.
Fleischmann.
Oh ja, ich muss jetzt gehen.
Hölle?
Und du weißt noch, was du zu sagen hast? Zum Ausfahren. Und des Heiligen Geistes. Ausfahren, das Zeichen zu geben. Seiner Fahrt ist. Gegrüßt seist du, Maria, voll der Gnade, hat er gesagt. Und das war Bedingung, das sagte. Also, Fleischmann ist fort. Fleischmann ist fort. Das ist der Nächste dran. Wer ist der Nächste? Der Nächste kein oder mehrere. Ist der Nächste kein im Namen des dreifaltigen Gottes, des Vaters, des Sohnes und des Heiligen Geistes.
Ich bin der Keine.
Dreifaltigen Gottes.
Ich hab mein Bruder geschlagen.
Das will ich dir auszufahren. Des Heiligen Geistes befehle ich dir, der seligen Jungfrau. Im Namen des dreifaltigen Gottes, des Vaters. Selber herrschen, obwohl ich nur geschöpft war. Im Namen des dreifaltigen Gottes, des Vaters und des Sohnes und des Heiligen Geistes befehle ich dir auszufahren und der allerseligsten Jungfrau die Ehre zu geben. Im Namen der allerseligsten Jungfrau, im Namen Jesu, befehle ich dir auszufahren. Im Namen des dreifaltigen Gottes, des Vaters und des Sohnes und des Heiligen Geistes, befehle ich dir auszufahren und allerseligsten Jungfrau die Ehre zu geben. Du wolltest dich im Himmel nicht unterwerfen. Du musst dich auch jetzt unterwerfen. Dem dreifaltigen Gott, der allerseligsten Jungfrau und auch den heiligen Engeln, heiligen Erzengel Michael. Beuge dich bis hinab. Im Namen des dreifaltigen Gottes. Im Namen des dreifaltigen Gottes, des Vaters und des Sohnes und des Heiligen Geistes, befehle ich dir auszufahren und nie mehr wiederzukehren und allerseligsten Jungfrau die Ehre zu geben.
Seid du, Maria, du bist voller Gnade.
Großer Gott, wir loben dich.
Das wäre mal lässig. Ich werde zuerst das offizielle Gebet sprechen. Das offizielle Gebet beten und dann singen wir das große Gott. Oramus de Deus omnipotens, o Spiritus iniquitatis amplius non habeat potestatem in hac camula tua Anneliese.